Eric Edholm, kind enough to join us for a couple moments. Does a great job for Pro Football Weekly and FanRag Sports. Eric, how you been, pal?
Yeah, I know what to tell you. You lost big. I don't think it was 80.5 last night.
I thought it was like 32. It was maybe 32 and a half.
So who knew we were going to get the Hoyer Goff Star Wars last night?
Maybe those two should always play on Thursday Night Football. Well, you know what? Let me ask you real quick on the Rams. I mean, listen, you get Washington's got to get that late touchdown with Cousins to beat them last week, and they were able to blow out the Colts with no luck. And then last night they put up a bunch of points. I'm not necessarily going to buy into them, but I think you got a young head coach, you got some talent on both sides of the football. More importantly, you give the quarterback a little confidence, by the way. You give him more time. He's had the preseason. He has training camp. He learned a little bit. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people wrote this kid off too soon. But he played well last night.
Absolutely. Jared Goff has had a good start to the season. I know he threw the game-sealing interception against the Redskins last week, and it was a throw he'd like to have back. He stared down the guy. But, I mean, you look at what he's done this season. I mean, one of the biggest jumps statistically that I can ever remember, he averaged 5.3 yards per attempt last year. 5.3 is bad. I mean, most quarterbacks are at least 7, somewhere in that range. 8 is very good, all that. He's up around 10 right now. I mean, so he's almost doubled his yards per attempt. So if you just use that stat alone, you're seeing that the offense has been opened up. They've added a ton of pass-catching weapons, whether it's Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods. They draft Gerald Everett and Cooper Kupp, and all these different ways that they can get the ball into playmakers' hands now. And they invested in the offensive line too. Gurley looks better. I mean, everything. It's all part and parcel with the development of this offense. And oh, by the way, Sean McVay knows X's knows. It was great. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it was. You mentioned offensive line, and we've seen the last couple weeks to start the season, the first 2 weeks, the offensive line play has not been appealing. Let's go to the Giants for a moment. Listen, I know they have a ton of issues. I know Eric Flowers has not played well. I think the head coach is somewhat delusional, the player as well, to come out and basically say, I've seen some good things or he's played well. I get it. He's a top 10 draft pick. So you want to stroke him a little bit, but the bottom line is this. You unless you chip him, unless you give him help, unless you have him lined up next to Pugh, unless you have another tight end, the offensive line is going to get the quarterback killed. And I'm just curious, do you think, first of all, do you think they should bench him, flat out bench him? Because if they have a player or two that they think is just as good or is worse, I mean, what difference does it make? And the other thing is, this kid, from all accounts, did training, lost weight, MMA, boxing, great shape, mentally ready to go, and yet he's regressed. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a mental block for a kid, when he's kind of being the one who's singled out. And, a lot of people watch games, they don't necessarily notice offensive line play unless something really bad is happening, like in this case. So, yeah, I mean, he's become kind of the scapegoat for this thing. Like you said, ninth pick in the draft. They've invested in that offensive line. They brought back the same starting 5 this year. They didn't make the upgrades that some people thought they needed to. My only question would be, who goes and plays there? Do you move Justin Pugh out to left tackle and now have to fix, change 2 positions to fix 1? Bobby Hart got banged up last game. I mean, to me, other than giving him help like you suggested, I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I was just going to say this: for him to play well, Pugh needs to be a left guard. So then you have to find a new right tackle. So if you believe Wheeler's going to be there, or DJ Fluker, even though the Giants believe he's better suited at guard, you move him the right tackle. Then what I would do is you have Ellison and Smith on the field. Ellison is an H-back. Smith is a fullback. And they can chip it either side in case Eli needs help.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea if Chad Wheeler can play or not. And I don't know if the Giants do either. I mean, that's part of it, right? And I think Pugh is a better guard. And I think they'll be fine. They made mistakes at center, too. I mean, Weston Richburg couldn't get the snap up. I don't know if it was on him or Eli. I mean, there's problems all across this line, and there's problems with the scheme, too. So, yeah, I mean, personnel is most definitely a huge part of the question. I mean, part of the issue here. I also think scheme plays into it, too. And Eli, I don't know that he's done his part either. I mean, his lack of mobility comes and hurts them at some point.
Yep.
He's got to know that he's going to get rid of the ball a little quicker. So whether it's play design, to help these guys out, whether it's the lack of a run game. I mean, all these things I think factor in at some point. And too much probably has been made of Flowers, because if you can't do something, don't ask the guy to do it. I mean,
I agree.
As sad as that sounds, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes a player's just not good enough no matter how hard they work. They just don't have the talent. And you're right, you got to put them in position to make plays, and you got to help them out when they need help. I'm curious, lastly on the Giants, are you of the belief that a head coach should be the head coach and not also be, say, the offensive coordinator and have the play calling duties? Do you think he should relinquish the play calling duties and let Sullivan take over?
Yeah, I saw what Gary wrote last week, and I saw, I know there's been sort of a talking point this week, and I've even echoed it. I've said, look, I mean, I don't know how these guys do it, but then again, you look last night, Sean McVay did fine. Kyle Shanahan seemed to do okay. It wasn't like there were game management, clock errors. Some guys just have a knack for doing it. There are. I don't even know if there are any defensive head coaches who call the plays, but I know there are a lot on offense. I would say there's about a dozen guys who call the offensive plays and also are the head coaches and manage the games and work the clock and see the big picture. It's a tough job. Some guys can do it, some can't. It's like back in the day, everyone wanted to be Mike Holmgren or Bill Parcells, buy the groceries and be the head coach, Bill Belichick, whoever you want to say. Not everyone can do that either. Some guys are just great unitaskers, not multitaskers. So in this particular case, Mike Sullivan's called plays before. He knows Eli, he trusts Eli, Eli trusts him. Might not be a bad idea, but you're also making a pretty big change before a division game when you're an 0-2. I don't know. That's just a lot right there.
Cleveland goes on the road in Indianapolis, and why I bring it up, Indianapolis they have a bunch of issues, but Cleveland's actually favored. When was the last time they were favored on the road? And then you got Cincinnati and Green Bay, and that kind of might be I used to call it years ago where you go outside, and if you have yard work to do, you kind of rake up the leaves and do the yard work. It has the makings of being an ugly game, especially with Rodgers back there offensively. I bring up those two teams respectively because you look at the head coach, you look at Pagano in Indianapolis, and then you look at Marvin Lewis in Seattle. If anything, if it keeps getting ugly and uglier for those two franchises, can you see one of those coaches being fired during the season? Or does it make sense to just let Lewis play out the season because, again, they didn't give him, he's basically working on a one-year contract in essence?
Right. He and his assistants do not have deals beyond this year, which, as you know, you don't see very often. Yep. Usually, even if a guy's a would-be lame duck, you always sort of seem to give him that 1 year of cushion before you end up firing him. But yeah, so there's obviously been a feeling, even over the summer, that if this Bengals team did not bounce back with all the skill position talent they have, with what looks like a somewhat competitive defense, that it could be Lewis's time. He's not as old as everybody thinks he is, but some people have suggested, hey, maybe he'd retire, maybe he'd walk off in the sunset. Who knows? So we'll see. I mean, that's a tough spot. Packers are banged up. Bengals did have a little more time to regroup, but they're just switching offensive coordinators. I don't know. That's a tough ask for them. And then, I guess with the Colts, new general manager in town, doesn't have any relationship with Pagano. I think he likes Chuck Pagano. Chris Ballard does. And, I think he thinks he's a good coach. I don't know that he thinks he's a good head coach. I don't know. It's hard to tell. When I talked to Ballard this summer, he was very tight-lipped about anything beyond this season. So the rumors have been, John Gruden and, hey, Peyton Manning could come in and be a John Elway type and all this stuff. I don't know that any of that stuff's bound to happen, but I do know the Colts are tired of having a franchise quarterback whenever Andrew Luck comes back and not doing anything with it.
I'm wondering, and listen, we hear Gruden every year, right? And then you start to hear Cowher as well. I mean, we hear that it's like it's clockwork. They got the Browns, Seattle, the Niners, and the Titans. Just say after 6-7 weeks, this is a 1-6 team, a 2-5 team. Forget about how everything else has fallen into play in the AFC South. What's the point of even having, like, if I'm the Colts, shut down Andrew Luck? I don't get it. Like, what he's got these major injuries now. Just shut him down for the season. Then what's the point of coming back for 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be interesting to see if that does play out that way. If they start 0-3, if they start losing games like you said, they're 1-6, 1-7. and Luck is itching to play, and Chuck Pagano is fighting for his job, I think, you can't tell a head coach not to play a star quarterback. I guess you could if there's a medical reason, but, if he's cleared by doctors, he's going to play. That would be my response to that, even though, logically speaking, I'm kind of with you. It's not the same as Peyton Manning with the neck back in 2002. It's different. But given the serious nature of some of Luck's injuries, the spleen, the shoulder, I mean, sort of vital parts to a quarterback's existence.
You're right.
I get it. I mean, I understand why Colts fans are almost like, forget it, man. Let's get the number one pick. Let's trade down. We got Luck. We'll let somebody get a QB and we'll stock up on draft, whatever. So I understand both sides of the equation here.
All right, two more before I let you get out of here. I can't recall a week where you had head coaches basically come out and call out their quarterbacks. We saw it with Arians with Palmer. You saw it in Garrett and Prescott, and then obviously McAdoo with Manning. And I kind of give that one an oh, by the way, because, listen, Eli's played in New York. He's been there before. It's like Parcells used to do, right? Sometimes I'm going to pull Sims to the side, and I'm going to rip you today even though you played well. It is what it is. Can you recall, though, a week or so where head coaches have come out, and even with Elliott, too, the running back with the Dallas Cowboys, even though Jerry Jones protects them, and they come out and they're calling out some of these players.
Yeah, that's been one of the big stories this week that I don't think has maybe gotten enough attention. I know, I'm sure in New York there's been plenty of talk about it there and everything, but, Palmer, like you said, at halftime of that game, we need more from our quarterback. Same thing with McAdoo and Eli after the game. First of all, I loved Eli's response, which is, I do know better. I do need to play better. And he took the ownership of it. If there's anybody mature enough to handle that,
no doubt,
he says he wants to be coached, that's Eli. I love it, Great lesson. And even Zeke Elliott, some people have questioned his maturity and his focus and all that. He said the same thing. Whether he believes it or not, I don't know. But he did the right thing, which is, all right, you know what? I've got to do better. And these people are counting on me. So the responses, I think, have been mostly positive. We'll see about Dak and whether he's, got the confidence and everything. I'm sure he does. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know what Carson Palmer's future beyond this year is in Arizona. I'd like to think Eli still has some time left in New York. But, sometimes you got to shake these things up, and not everybody can be politically correct about these things and tap them on the helmet and say, let's go get them next time. I mean, you got to be tough.
Listen, you're paid to win games. That's what the NFL head coach. You got to win on Sunday, bottom line. Before I let you get out of here, so we see the news come out with Aaron Hernandez, which is kind of alarming because he's only played 3 years in the NFL and then to have advanced stages of CTE. Look, I mean, it wasn't a surprise that his lawyers now, they come up with the lawsuit against the league and the Patriots on Thursday. On Friday, the league, comes back with their comment as well. It's not even about Hernandez being or treated like a victim. My issue is, because I think that's a joke, by the way, my issue is you've got a player now who was a tight end. It's not as though he's going to have a ton of contact every play, night in and night out, 3 years into his career, and he stage 3, 4. We know you can only do research on these players once they pass. It just seems as though the NFL, man, it's a great sport. Football is a great sport, and it's a great entity at times, but it just seems like every time you start to get a little momentum, you're dealing with one thing, now they got to deal with something else, then it's something else. I mean, do you think Goodell, if anything, will come out during the season and speak on this, or we'll hear him later on come playoff time? And I'm wondering, what is the league going to do here? How do you make the game safer?
Yeah, I mean, we could probably fill a 30-minute show on this alone, and Goodell, I mean, I don't know the next time he's going to speak. The owners' meetings in New York are in mid-October, so it's at least a few weeks away that we're sure to hear from him. But I'm guessing they won't say a lot, given that there is an open legal case. But at some point, right, he's got to sort of address these things. I will say this. With Hernandez, it's obviously a live wire thing where, okay, he murdered at least one person that he's been convicted of. I know the courts reversed it later, but still. Found guilty of murdering at least one person, might have been involved in multiple shootings, but what was, how many subconcussive hits did he take? How many concussions did he get in youth football, in high school, in college? We don't know that information. How much drug use was there? We know from these reports that there was rumors of a lot of stuff going on there. Did he have a pre-existing condition that we are unaware of? There are a billion questions that come up. So the optics are horrible. because of the unique nature of this case, but there's also more questions asked than answered with this news, I think.
Yeah, no, well said. All right, I'll let you add on that. All right, my friend, listen, good to catch up. Great insight as always. Enjoy the games, and hopefully any pick sixes with Glennon this weekend or what?
I'll be at the game. I'll be sure to keep close track, yeah.
I'm not going to write them off just yet. I'm not going to write them off.
Yeah. And the Bears aren't either. They're not ready to give up on them yet.
Nor should they.
They're still trying to develop them, yeah.
A lot of money, too. All right, my friend, enjoy the games. Hopefully we'll talk soon. I always appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You got it. Eric Edholm, really good stuff.